Hello and welcome to Tree Town. I am your host, Ryan McCooch, and joining me today is our special guest. He's the director of scouting with the club, Billyle Alman. Bilal, thank you for coming on.
Ryan, thanks for having me back, I guess, now that we have like the cool new studio
cool
feel.
Set. This is your first time with this wall. We were in the conference room last time.
No, the whole store, for those that haven't been here, is awesome.
It's really fantastic,
Yeah.
and thank you again for coming on. I think you're our third return guest, so
Really?
you're an esteemed company.
Special company, yeah.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
So we really want to delve into your current history with the AFC, with the scouting and that sort of thing.
Sure.
But I do want to bring it back for your history with the club for people who may not know.
Sure.
So you were one of the first intern with the club?
Yeah, one of the first few.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was even before Bilal was chairman, as you
Yeah.
mentioned to me before the podcast.
Yeah.
So how exactly did you get involved with the club?
So I got involved with the club, and this might have been pre-2015.
Mm-hmm.
Right around the team being an idea with the Kickstarter run by Jamie, our club's founder.
Right.
I was meeting with Jamie and some of like the first Main Street hooligans, just about getting some interest going. It wasn't necessarily about trying to be an intern at that time. I was in school at UMich myself, and I was just looking for more opportunities to be involved with soccer. And it ended up turning into more of an internship once the team really hit the ground running with the entire ownership heading into season one. Was kind of mentored by Rishi Narayan and then Bilal Saeed after that. So yeah, I was part of like that first internship group. I ran the game day operations for the next 2 seasons. Last season I was not formally involved, but still very much a fan.
Right.
And now I kind of return to the club more on the sporting side of things, which is a really cool fit for me.
So you've been around for ages,
Yeah.
and since the beginning with the club.
Sure.
What have you noticed in the organizational structure that has changed from year one to right now?
It's a good question. So there have been new partners that have been added as well, whether involve partners, owners, and those that are also silent. But it hasn't changed much on that side. What's unique about this club is, though there's many partners and owners, they're all very involved. They all share a common goal, and they're very driven to see the team win, which I think is most unique, certainly compared to other teams at this level. I think you very much have to throw stuff at the wall to be profitable in a market which is amateur soccer. But the commitment to winning has never changed among the owners. Things have definitely changed with the coaching staff from year one to year two, but from there on, they've ascended upward with the leadership of Eric Redlin and his staff, Boise guys like that.
Yeah.
Not to take anything away from the first season, I feel like it deserves an asterisk because the club itself was trying to figure out what it wanted to be at that time.
Right.
But Eric Redlin and those guys were definitely the right staff to put in place once they figured out what they wanted to do, and what that was join the MPSL and kind of take things on from there. Once they knew that was something that they wanted to take on, the clubs never looked back.
Yeah, I think that's a common theme that you find with a lot of people around the club, where their first season within the Great Lakes Premier League was a great time, but it was very much feeling stuff out.
Yeah.
And once you got into the NPSL, that's really where the club that people know today was formed.
And it was fun.
Yeah.
In that first season, there's always those weird stories about, hey, we did this trip as a family, and kind of the strange things that went with year one.
I believe you played in the game in
year
one? Is that correct?
Yeah, I played in a match. So this was the season finale, which was at home. I got to check in. I played for that coach, David Heapstreet, in college, and he invited me to train later in the season once the team was kind of, one, out of contention for winning that league. Two, a lot of their college guys had returned to their schools. So there was a need roster-wise, which was a unique but very exciting opportunity for me and my family. Yeah, I'll never forget it. I don't talk about it much, and there's not that many current players that would care to hear about it. But it's a memory that's pretty cool for me.
Absolutely. That is very cool that you're so involved with the history of the club.
Yeah.
So you obviously have a deep history within it, but I do want to talk about what you're doing presently.
Sure.
So as director of scouting, can you talk a bit about what exactly that entails?
Yeah. So it's a very defined role, and it's interesting that we use the word scout because I very much am, but it's not for what many would think is prospective players. I think when you hear the word scout, you're thinking that guy's looking for players to fill roles in the AFC team. It's very much more geared towards analyzing our opponents and scouting their matches ahead of when AFC Ann Arbor is going to play them, whether it's in league or Open Cup. Mm-hmm. So yeah, my job really is involved around plotting out our opposing team's schedules, whether checking in or watching their games remotely, and kind of putting together match reports that Eric and Boise will use to kind of get their team prepped for the game that week.
Now, can you share a little bit of insight as to what you're exactly looking for with those match reports?
Sure. So the players definitely matter a lot, but it's much more tactic driven as far as how the other team is lining up in most games, how do they look defensively, offensively, key player movements, and kind of how they try to build out of things, whether they play direct out of the back, and really narrowing down how the other team feels playing defense, whether that's a press, sitting deep, other things along those lines. It's definitely my job to get info on the other team's players, but like those that follow AFC and the league itself, players rotate a lot in teams in our league.
Yeah.
So it's great to get notes on them, but it's much more focused on how is that team and the opposing coach lining things up and how are they playing their games.
Now, how exactly did you get involved with scouting?
It's a good question. So I recently, for those that aren't familiar with like the U.S. soccer coaching structure, I recently took my C license course, which is like it's required of coaches to kind of climb that ladder through your coaching grades.
Right.
So I recently took my C license course where there was a part of it that required match scouting and kind of an assignment that was geared around that. I quickly found that I was unprepared to kind of do that type of thing once I was given the assignment. I'm sure I did fine on it, but all of us coaches went to that course thinking that we know the game well, which I'm sure we do.
Right.
But to put together a match report was something that I had never been asked to do when I played in high school and college, but was never asked to do anything like that. So it definitely sparked my interest in it, and a lot of my interest in the role is just learning from Eric and Boise and how they're going to use that info to kind of influence their own team. I coach on the youth soccer side, so I'm not really scouting my opponents.
Right.
At the youth
9, 10, 11 level,
though,
games.
Though I have found an interest for just learning more about the game, how do teams line up and how can you kind of exploit how they're playing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So looking ahead to the season to come, you mentioned you're looking at current opponents now.
Yeah.
And how ever-changing these NPSL rosters can be. Is it harder to scout this early for an NPSL club?
It's going to depend upon the team, right? So AFC Ann Arbor is going to play Michigan Stars in their first game. It wasn't until recently that we knew when Stars were going to even play their first match outside of the NPSL season. So we know they have a game coming up, which I'll go and see and scout. But it's certainly hard to start this early in the season, one, because guys on their team this early might not be on the team when we play them soon. And just due to accessibility for some of these clubs, they're not putting things out there as content-wise as much as the AFC Ann Arbor.
Right.
So it can be kind of tough to track things down, but we've been successful so far.
Now, in veering towards the U.S. Open Cup, where you have Lansing Ignite, they are the confirmed first-round opponent.
Right.
All USL League One games are on ESPN Plus, so it's a bit more accessible. It's a professional level.
Yeah.
What is the sort of scouting that goes into a team like that?
So this is the flip side, right? Because this is a team they're new, but like they're suddenly pro. And built in their league, USL 1, all their matches are on ESPN Plus. The U.S. Open Cup match will be on ESPN Plus as well. So their matches are there. They've been playing preseason friendlies that were open to the public. So it's much easier to find info on teams like that. It's also unique because these are different players, but a similar coaching staff to what was formerly Lansing United. So I think Eric even has a head start on what their coach might do, how they might line up, and how he likes to play.
Yeah.
That said, they're not really feeling guys out to start the season. They've had their roster ready in a proper preseason, getting ready for their season.
Right.
So we feel confident that the guys that are playing for them currently are going to get a lot of time in that Open Cup match.
Now, and then you also have the home opener with Kalamazoo.
Yeah.
Is that a similar situation with Michigan Stars, or are you still preparing at that sort of level?
Similar with Stars. So Kalamazoo will get some preseason friendlies and kind of an inter-club match as well. Kalamazoo is closer to the Grand Rapids FC side of things, where they bring back a lot of returning players as far as local talent, or college guys that they've leaned on in the past.
Right.
So we have a good idea of what their players will look like. That said, they're breaking in a new coach, so their early contests will be very important to kind of see where they're at.
So I believe it's Michigan Stars on May 8th, May 4th, Lansing on May 8th, and then Kalamazoo on May 12th.
Right.
Those are 3 games in a little over a week.
Yeah.
Is that harder to prepare for, or is it easier because you're still in preseason?
It's going to be difficult to prepare for, I'm sure, on the third match of that slate. So you go from your MPSL season opener, which is going to be on the road, I believe, at Stars.
Yes.
You want to get off on the right foot. I don't think we're going to hold anything back in that game. That said, I'm not sure if AFC Ann Arbor is going to have their entire roster ready at that time.
Right. I was going to ask, does that play into your scouting report as well? Or
So it does, and you want your guys to have rest. It's not going to weigh into the scouting report that I'm putting together.
Right.
How Eric's going to interpret that and kind of present it to his team. Maybe he's going to have to tailor things a little bit of a different way.
Yes.
And certainly not that all of the eggs are in one basket, but immediately following that Michigan Stars game, I think all attention is going to be put on Lansing. I don't think there's going to be that much looking ahead to the Kalamazoo. I think Open Cup, you get this opportunity once a year.
Right, exactly.
AFC Ann Arbor has had this opportunity the past 2 years, and they've been close, but we haven't gotten through. Certainly, you're going to have to deal with a home team environment. That is at Cooley's Law School Stadium. So all the eggs aren't in that basket, but it's going to be a full effort put towards that game, and then I'm sure they'll figure out how they're going to line up against Kalamazoo. Whomever's healthy at that point will get a nod.
Now, this is a question I'm not sure you might even have the answer to, but we are taping this on a Monday. U.S. Open Round 2 Cup draw, that comes out this upcoming Wednesday, so we won't know it, but the fans watching this will.
Right.
Hypothetically, if AFC were to beat Lansing, what sort of preparation do you go into for a possible Round 2 opponent? Sure.
So it's interesting because it'll, of course, be put on me to kind of put a match report on who immediately our next opponent is. Though I truly think once you get that far in a tournament, you're really working on what your team does best. And even though you're going to play a team that's in a USL championship or something like that, you definitely want that team to feel like they have to adjust to your skill sets as well. So even though this could be a midweek game once again, I really think that AFC Ann Arbor will put their best effort and kind of gear their healthy players towards what will be that match in the tournament, and kind of figure things out from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when we had you on last time, it was NPSL schedule talk, and it was still in the early stages. But now that it's been about a couple of months since we've recorded that first one, has there been anything within the league that might have caught your eye that hasn't happened in the previous podcast?
Sure. So I think Detroit City has played a game already, and they have other games that are scheduled. And I think that's kind of caught our eye as a staff that they're already playing matches this early. It looks like they have a full squad ready. They just visited what I believe was it Charlotte FC? Or Chattanooga, excuse me, in which was a televised match, thousands of people there at Chattanooga. So, of course, the Detroit games are still catching my eye, but as people announce players like Grand Rapids and stuff like that, it looks like they continue to announce players that are high profile. plenty of teams around the league are of note.
Now, in terms of AFC as a whole, what do you see of the roster? Are there any players that caught your eye when they were announced, or anything specifically?
Sure. So I like to look at the roster announcements more so of the players that are not returning, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I believe in the past we've focused on at the forward spot, if not a Chris Adiyambo or a Yuri Farkas. You're looking, and not all players are announced yet, but are those guys returning? Do we need a new forward, for example? Not that I'm saying we get those guys back or not.
Right.
But those are kind of how I look at the player announcements. But yeah, I'm excited about all kinds of guys. I think Jordan Montoya deserves a second crack at the season because he was a little bit hindered by injury last year, though I think he was someone that was scouted against for the other teams. He's very dynamic.
Yeah.
But then you bring back guys like Frenchie, Matt, in the back line, that fan favorites that are excited to see back in the club.
So in terms of AFC as a whole throughout the season, May will be a pretty busy month. June will be pretty busy. July tapers off a bit at the end, but you're looking at playoffs and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's obviously a bit it's difficult for the players as well, but is that going to be difficult for you as well, do you foresee?
So things get easier in the regard of, after we've played a team twice, I can kind of shift my focus away from that club.
Yeah.
Focus on others, if that makes sense.
Right.
So waning down towards the end, we'll have a better idea of what the table looks like. So maybe I have to keep a team in mind if we have to see them a third time. But it does balance out pretty well. I would say the beginning of the season is maybe the trickiest.
Yeah.
The first round robin of playing all of these clubs and getting reports, that'll be tough.
Right. Haven't seen them.
The second time around will be to kind of fine tune, are these guys still in the team now that we're going into the second time playing them? Is coach still having that line up the same way? If those two things check off as yeses, it becomes much easier to put together those reports.
Yeah.
And if things change, obviously not. But once you get later in the season, we'll probably have played most of the teams twice, and I can kind of shift my focus away and focus on who's left.
Yeah.
And if, like I said, just keep in mind those who are higher in the table. Maybe we have to see them as well. And I guess the last thing I'd add is, if it looks like we're a top of the table club, which we all hope we are, we have been in the past year, who are we going to see in a Midwest region final that's not in our conference?
Yes.
Things like that. For example, scouting a Cleveland SC, once we finally figure those things out, you kind of have to look at the region as a whole if you're a scout too.
Plenty of moving parts all throughout the season.
Yeah.
What are your favorite aspects about scouting as a whole?
So I think you try to stay objective when you put together your team reports. But the most fun part about putting those things together is to try to see where opposing teams are vulnerable, if that makes sense. So are they playing out of the back? Do they play direct? How high is their back line? Do they sit deep expecting a long ball? You read those things and put those things together for coach, but you think in the back of your head, wow, I see something, or I see an area in the field where teams that they've played so far haven't really exploited, but it's open.
Yes.
And that's exciting whether coach goes with those suggestions or not. Part of this is just a learning opportunity for me to kind of put my thoughts forward and kind of explain how I see the game, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you very much for
Yeah.
coming on, for sharing some of your insights.
For sure.
It's greatly appreciated, and I'm sure it will be throughout the season as we get to see your hand in the match preparation.
Always fun to come by. Thanks, Ryan.
Of course. We are back with more Welcome to Tree Town, and we are here with the first player guest ever on the podcast of the season, Matt Braem. Matt, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You're better known as Frenchie with everyone. So we're excited to have you back for another season with the club, and we're excited to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Definitely looking forward to the season for sure.
Absolutely. So before we get into the present day stuff and talking about this season, let's go back in time a bit. How did you first get involved with AFC?
It was like 2015, I believe. Kind of like from player to player that I knew Eric. His name is Greg Timmer. He plays for Grand Rapids now.
Yeah.
I played in college with him, and I was kind of looking for NPSL team. And it was kind of last minute, and Greg was like, well, I got a good guy that you can reach out to and maybe work out. So reach out to Eric, got a couple calls, and I as Eric does so well, like just saw me the club pretty easily, and I just got started. So
So you have been with the club for years now, and you've seen it evolve from the start of the NPSL career till now, heading into what will be its fifth season as a club in its history. Have you noticed any changes within the club itself?
oh yeah, I mean a lot. Just from the staff already, just all around the club, the support of the fans, like the men's league are just amazing. And you look from year one to now, it's just social media. They are ever present, and also the community. You look around, like it's just like amazing, and it's just small details that just make it every year like more and more enjoyable. I go again with the housing, and the first year housing was like kind of figure it out, and now every year just always. I mean, you get the nicest places in Ann Arbor and stuff, so it's definitely enjoyable for sure.
Now, when you came with the club for your first season, was this your first time in Ann Arbor?
It was, yeah, it was.
Okay. What was that like for you?
It's definitely like from going to. So I got lucky to play in Texas. I got lucky to play in Maine. And coming to Ann Arbor, it's like I mean, it's a university. So I mean, I always say like kind of like jokingly, if U of M wasn't here, Ann Arbor would not be what it is. And that's just definitely what it is. Like around like the soccer and stuff, but at the end of the day you're also spending your summer and spending time, and it's always nice when you can go out. There is restaurants, there is bars, like you still have nice time while you're still playing soccer, so it's always like enjoyable.
Right.
So.
I'm a student there, and I'm spending my first summer this upcoming summer, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
as well,
it's really nice. Like it might be a little bit more boring, I guess, than there's a little bit less people, but it's more enjoyable because you
It's a little
can walk
quieter.
around, and it's nice. The weather is just amazing. So
It's great. I'm ready for the summer.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
it's sunny, but like it's 50 out right now.
yeah,
It's like I
this
need it to be a
morning
little
practice
warmer.
was terrible.
It was supposed to snow, and I'm glad it held off for you
Yeah.
guys. But so you're coming back with AFC, coming back from Harrisburg Heat, which was your first professional soccer. I want to say job, but it's the start of your soccer career. I guess it's technically a job.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, I get paid to do what I love, so it's I guess it is my job for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. What was that like for you playing? First of all, have you played indoor before?
Not really, to be fair. Nah, not really. I mean, I did, when you're a kid and you play 5v5 and you go like to the city and stuff, but
Right.
no, definitely not serious, and it's more pickup games than serious game. So it doesn't have really meaning, so you're just messing around a little bit.
Right. So the professional level with Harrisburg, what was that? Have you been able to take anything in terms of like training habits or that sort of thing into your upcoming preparations for this season?
Oh, 100%. I always joke around. I'm kind of like, I'm not a practice player.
Yeah.
If I could, I would love to just show up every day for games and just play, But once you turn professional, then you're not allowed to take days off. You show up to practice, and it's kind of like, especially in indoor with so many lines, and it's kind of in hockey, so
Right.
there is not really any starters. Like you line of 1, 2, 3. You're playing every week for practice to go on line of 2s instead of 3,
Yeah.
so you get more time to play. So again, like you're not allowed to take days off, and you show up and you just have to play. And what I realized more as well is the expectations are way higher. You play in college, sometimes you're allowed to take a bad touch, and you're allowed to do, maybe be a little bit lazy. Especially in the indoor game, you get exposed right away. If you cheat and you don't follow your man, it's 1v1s, you get scored on. If
Right.
you take a bad touch, you get scored on. Like I actually got a goal that way, that the guy
We
pretty
saw
much
that
took
on
a bad
Twitter.
touch and I scored it. So that's like every single detail, especially in indoor, it's smaller, it's much faster, so you have to like be focused 100% of the time.
You
So-
have played at the collegiate level, like you said, at Loyola. You've played in the NPSL level, obviously, and then playing on a professional level indoor. Is that the biggest difference between the levels? That people will punish you if you have that moment of laziness?
Yeah, I mean, in college, like, unless you play against, big time teams. I remember in the NCAA tournament, we played against Notre Dame, and they probably had one of the best four in the nation, and you give him one space at the 85th minute, and it's a goal, you lose 1-0.
Yeah.
So unless you play against those big time players, average, I would say definitely in college you can be a little bit more. You can be late to some tackles, or you can be a little bit more loose on those guys, and you don't necessarily get punished. Same with the NPSL. Um, there is obviously some really good players. Like I know Detroit City forward, like some of them you can't really give them any space. But yeah, again in the average you can be a little bit more loose on them. In the indoor, like especially the conference that we play, when you have Utica and Baltimore, they're probably two of the best team in the country. You get punished right away. Like if you let them turn you, then or you're late, it's just those guys are like class for sure.
Now, with indoor soccer, obviously it's a lot smaller, closer confines. Have you been able already to maybe take some of those aspects into the bigger outdoor game? Or is it just two different
fields?
Fields?
It is in some extent, but not totally. I mean, the touch are still the same. Maybe a little bit different because as a center back, you have way more time.
Yeah.
So I was joking about this morning with Eric, and I said, when you get your first touch in indoor, like you have to make sure it's close to you, and again, like details. In outdoor, like especially the center back, you can take a long touch and you get 2, 3, 4 seconds. You look up and you're like, oh, I got a lot of room,
Yeah.
So it's definitely more enjoyable and less stressful, I guess, as a center back. But there is some aspect as well, like my 1v1 defending, I can definitely say that improved because again, the indoor game you're in 1v1 all the time. So now I'm definitely more comfortable with a guy running at me and dealing with it. Those passes as well are probably more precise as well because it's tighter.
Right.
So definitely on terms of fitness as well, it's a little bit different. The runs are maybe a little bit shorter, but it's so intense that like I think I was telling Jeff Chuk this morning that I'm the fittest I've ever been. So it's definitely looking forward to this summer and get started for sure.
Definitely a plus. Yeah. So in terms, was this your first training back today?
Yeah, it was.
So
first outdoor training was weird.
What was that like?
Well, first of all, I haven't put cleats on for like probably last summer, I think probably. So it's definitely interesting. The touch is a little bit different, but again, like I enjoy it. And it's two different games, and I get to play those long balls that I love so much. So I'm definitely like I think it's a good balance to be able to play, for like 4 months indoor, 3 months outdoor, and then get a little break as well for my body to get some regeneration before the next season. So I think it's a good balance for sure.
Absolutely. So what was it like being able to see some of the guys on the coaching staff that you've spent so many of the past couple summers with?
It's nice. It's nice. I always call it like it's my family, and like Bruno always joke about, and he says like welcome home. It's just I spent so much time with like those guys, and like especially the first couple of years, like I was be on the phone with Eric, like before games and after games, and just talk about it for an hour or 2 hours. So definitely like with Eric, it's kind of like almost family and like my uncle to some extent. I'm definitely looking forward to see again those like the owners with Mike, Rishi, Mike, like they just and it's family, like when you see them it's like big hug and like you feel like the love. So Boise as well, the goofy guy, so I was just messing around with Jeff. So it's definitely like again like it's coming home, and it's a different atmosphere than when you're playing as a professional because you don't really have that that friendly relationship with your coaches. It's job and it's your boss, so definitely different.
Right. It's always good to be back too.
For sure, yeah.
So looking ahead to this season, you mentioned, or before the podcast when we were talking with Billyle, that Eric's always bringing in consistently talented guys. What have you seen more of the same so far this season? Obviously, the full squad isn't here yet, but is that something that you see consistently throughout seasons?
Yeah, I mean, you always. I think Eric probably might be one of the best recruiters in the nation. Like, it's just the way he pitches the club, and he doesn't even need to lie to some extent, but he also knows what people want to hear and what people are looking for.
Right.
And he just brings always like players that you just like, where did he get that guy from? I always joke about Stanley, like it's a random guy from Kenya that you bring in, and he's like best player in the nation, and it's
right.
like okay. So I mean, it's definitely enjoyable, and I was joking with Ben, and I was like, I feel like I'm not even gonna play this year, because it's just like, okay, it's just bringing guys that are like, wow, like, in terms of resume and CV, it's okay, like, it's good. And you also get the guys that are back, like James Varney, Roof, those guys that what they have and what they can give to the club. So it's always a good mix to have, some returners players that and some new guys that are like excited to get started. So
that's
sure.
a perfect thing to tie into my next question for you, which is, what are your expectations for the season to come? Is it early? Is it a bit too early to say still, or do you have something like more set in mind?
I mean, to be honest, like the past 3 years we lost in the same round every time. So definitely expectation is to do better, and go to like those national finals and semifinals, and finally put Ann Arbor like on the spot as like on the nation and dominant club. Every year I think we have the talent for it, and it's just always so short, and it's like PKs or so definitely like in terms of expectation, and I think it's clear like Eric wants to win. So we play a nice brand of soccer and we enjoy it, but at the same time it's like you're coming in and you have expectation that you got to perform. And that's also like one of the clear pitch that he gives you when you're on phone with him. It's you're gonna come in, you're gonna have a good summer, you can have fun, but on the field like you gotta be there. So for sure, definitely going, a step forward compared to like in terms of trophies and stuff, winning. And after that, meeting expectation from last year as best defender in the country, maybe having the best player in the country again. For sure, I mean, as a club, you don't want to just be content with what you were last year, obviously. Right. So you want to get better. So at the spot we are right now, I think it's a tight point to get that much better because we're already up there, but you want to be all the way to the top. So definitely in terms of expectation, that's what definitely we'll be looking for.
Absolutely. So you are one of, I believe, just 2 players. You and Jake Rosen are the only 2 players that will be a part of every single NPSL season with AFC. That sort of makes you like the elder statesman of the group. So do you feel any added wisdom that you have saying like, I've been around this club for so many years? Is that something that helps you with confidence?
I mean, on the field, I would say maybe a little bit because, I know how Eric, likes to play and what the expectations are. So it's easier for me to like, meet those expectations and make sure that those guys also coming in know what's going on. But I think what I really taken ownership on and like, take it for me, it's kind of outside of the field. So, I like to show people around, like, Ann Arbor is almost like my city now, so I'm kind of like, oh, look at this.
You
like,
know what's happening.
Yeah, so it's like, my first move is always like, to go to the law school and show like the Harry Potter.
Like, the Harry Potter library, yeah.
So like, I always love to like take those guys and like for example with Will that is with me, like he never been here, so you want to show him around and be like, I sold him the city so nice. I want to like be able like when it's nice, I'll be like, yeah, we can take a bird and go around. Like this restaurant is amazing. This bar is nice. So like, for sure, like definitely, I think that's where I take the most ownership on is making sure that I like the guys have a good summer. Because again, like you're a college student, most likely you play from August to April, May, and it's easy to just say, I'm just gonna take a good summer and go to Europe and chill. And those guys make sacrifices obviously to come when you have so many internationals as well. Could be going home and they're staying here. So for me, it's making sure that they have a good summer as well and enjoy it on the field, but also outside of it.
What else are some of your favorite things to do in Ann Arbor? What's on Frenchie's summer bucket list for Ann Arbor?
Definitely a little move to Aventura for sure.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
Get some tapas.
1 or 2 nights out in between Live and Good Time Charlie's.
Staples of Ann Arbor.
For sure. And then I like to go to the river a little bit. I've been saying that I want to do that. That kayak kind of like going down the river. And I never got to do it. So this year is definitely going to be one of my bucket lists to do for sure.
Very cool.
And then maybe a Tigers game or something. It's always
get
fun
down
to
to
go
Detroit
there.
too. Detroit's fun.
It is. I like to go get Taco Tuesday in Detroit with Tito. He always bring me there, and it's awesome. He's got this little hole in the wall taco places. It's nice.
Oh, Taco Tuesday, man.
For sure.
So I love talking with you about the club and its history, but I do want to talk a bit about you personally. You're obviously from France, and you came over to play collegiately in the States. How did you decide that was a move that you wanted to make?
Well, that's a long story, but to make it short, I got to a point in France when I kind of felt like I was blocked. I When I got to school, I was so involved into soccer, and I was in a professional academy, and soccer was obviously a big part of it, and we missed classes because of practices and stuff like that. And when I got to 18, got some injuries, I always struggle with injuries, and the move was kind of like I want to go back to school as well. And it got to a point that I couldn't do what I wanted to do because of, I limited myself with soccer. So I was kind of
Right.
like, what I'm going to do is not what I want to do. So friend of a friend of a friend knew someone that had a company that sends players out in the US. So, I had a big talk with my dad and my mom, and it was kind of like, that's what makes sense. I was able to go back to school, go play again. I got a second chance. And to be fair, also, like, for me, it was kind of like, I probably underestimated a little bit, like, the US level. It was
Yeah.
kind of like, it'd be easier to go pro, like, go play pro there. So I can
Right,
go there, get a
exactly.
degree, get like a kind of like an emergency door open if I need to go back to school, and also play, and then I can make it there, and
Of
play
course,
for
yeah.
there. So definitely, when I got here, I was like, okay, it's maybe not as easy, but that's why my dad always pushed me to say you gotta stay focused with school. Injuries happen so quickly, and you never know what happens, and especially with my body that I'm really prone to injury. I always have to make sure I got a B, C, and D plan. So that's what the move was for sure.
Was it at all a culture shock for you moving from France to
Oh,
the
it was
States?
for sure. Well, first of all, the language barrier. When I came here,
Yeah.
I knew zero English, so
Oh, okay.
I was walking around with like a little iPad, and I was trying to talk to people, and every time I didn't know a word, I just had to get on the Wi-Fi and get a translator. So I definitely learned English pretty quickly because of it. But it was also like dinner time is different, way of eating is
Yeah.
different, portions are different. Um, Culture maybe not as bad, like that if I was from like Asia or something, that it's like completely different. It's still a
Right.
like Western civilization, so it's
Yes,
not too
exactly.
bad. But definitely like some details are like obviously the beginning, probably year and a half. The beginning was a little bit hard, yeah.
Okay. Was there any particular reason that you chose Loyola?
Money, to be fair.
Yeah.
I I was at a community college for a year and a half. I
Mhm.
got lucky enough to have a lot of offers, and I visited two, three, four schools, and when I got on my visit, most of the schools were like 80%, 85% scholarship, and then you get to a school that tells you we're giving you full ride. It's quick. I
Mhm.
remember, so I was really into Boston College,
Yeah.
and I really liked it, and I called my dad, and I'm like, I got a big choice to make. So he's like, what's going on? So I said, I got this school that I'm like really pumped about, and like that I'm really excited, and they're giving me, I think it was 87 or something, like a random number, and I've got this school that is giving me a full ride.
Mhm.
And my family don't have that much money, so it's always been like you gotta be smart.
Right.
So when I asked my dad, he's like, "What's your question?" So I say, "Well, where should I go?" And he goes, "This is not a question." So like the day later, I called the coach and I said, "I'm in."
Yeah.
Um, Not saying that I didn't like the school or didn't like the program or anything.
Oh, of
Like I
course.
loved it, but I mean, at the end of the day, like definitely the money aspect was what make me transfer and go there for sure.
Things worked out too well,
For
for
sure,
sure.
yeah.
So last couple questions for you. One more personally, from between France and the States. Can you give me something you miss about France that you can't find in the States, and then something that you like about the States that you can't do in France?
Ooh, the first one is easy. I say a good baguette.
Okay,
And
yeah.
then I mean, you definitely don't see. You can't really find a good like
Haven't found
boulangerie
bread
here,
up
like
to
with
par.
some croissant and stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely, and that's my like little greedy side that comes in. The other way around, I think it wouldn't be a thing, but it's more like the people.
Uh-huh.
I do enjoy American people more than French people, or in general, obviously.
Mhm.
I just think that people here are more genuine, and friendly and true, and I always come back to like I always talk about Bilal and Rishi for example, and those guys just give me so much, and I never expect anything back. In France, it's kind of almost like a little bit more selfish oriented.
Okay.
I mean, for example, like when I was in, kind of like in a bad place in September, and I was kind of like moving around. Like I stayed in Billyle. I was supposed to stay for a week, and I ended up staying for I think a month and a half or two. And then like it never did anything and never asked for anything back. And like and if that was in France, I don't know if necessarily people would have done it.
Yeah.
You know, and same with Rishi, and those guys are just amazing. So yeah, for sure.
And last question for you. I like to close all my interviews with this. Out of your entire career with AFC Ann Arbor, do you have a favorite moment with the club, or a couple favorite moments?
I've got probably two. The first one would be the comeback win against Lenzing at home. I think it was the first season. I think it was the first season because Dario was here and Nectar were here. So the first season we were down 2-0 at like the 75th minute or whatsoever.
Rishi talked about this one too.
Yeah, and yeah, he also has to steal my things, Rishi. But yeah, I mean that one was just like I remember too, like it was the 75th minute I think, and it was pretty deep in the season, and I was getting kind of like I was hitting a wall, and I remember saying Eric like I'm kind of like almost giving up and be like give me a rest for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think it was kind of like screw you, and he kind of subbed some guys, and guys that may not be starting all games, and we scored once, and I was like damn, and then we scored two, and I was like damn, and then we got a third one, and I'm like that just happened. And I remember like the third goal was Hector.
Yeah.
That took off his shirt and did like the Cristiano Ronaldo celebration, and he got some abs out of nowhere that he didn't know were coming from, and definitely that was like one of the highest point for sure. Mm-hmm. And I think the other one would be probably AZ's goal last year.
Yeah.
In the semifinals at like the last minute or like 5 minutes before the end, I think. Mm-hmm. And then I remember like just everyone just going crazy, and it was just like almost like wow, we just scored a goal like 5 minutes before the end.
Yeah.
So
right at the death.
Mm-hmm. There is also like other like Moko's goal last year. That was just against Detroit City. It's always like a special moment. Our win against Detroit City 2 years ago, I think, when Dario scored the PK. Mm-hmm. Obviously, against Detroit City, there is a little bit more fun to beat them.
Interstate rivalry.
Yeah, I mean it is definitely like, and I mean you learn to respect them for sure. Mm-hmm. I mean they are a good side, and I follow them on Twitter because I like to kind of like look around and see what they got coming back in. And I was actually talking about some guys, and I was like they have a good team this year. Mm-hmm. They're kind of doing like us, bringing some new guys and bringing the best guys that they had the past 3 years, and and I think it's gonna be a little battle between us two with probably Grand Rapids as well. Mm-hmm. So definitely excited to have them coming home soon. It'll be like the last game of the season, I believe, or something like that. So
very close.
It'll probably be like one of the deciders. So definitely good games coming up.
Absolutely. Well, we're excited to have you on board for yet another season. Mm-hmm. Thank you for coming on to the podcast as well. We appreciate it. And thank you for watching. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at AFC Ann Arbor. And stay tuned to afcannarbor.com for any club news. Until next time, I'm Ryan McCooch. Take care.